So there we are. The transcription has started and the recording has started. So we are recording everything again. I will upload a little bit later. I will show you how I set it up again at the end of this session. And then we will, at least I will go for weekend and you will probably have some work to do and then go for weekend, which is always good. Weekend is always good. You see my screen, if I'm correct. I've got one more module, the difference between the two Cloud Blue platforms. It might be something that you already know or you have a feeling about it. Let's make it structural. Let's make it with more underlying knowledge. That is the story I want to cover today. But before I do that, is there anything that you want me to explain from Monday session or from Wednesday session? If not, can you give me a thumbs up again? Okay, I see some thumbs coming up. Thank you. All right. Let's start this story. The whole story about the difference between the Cloud Blue platforms is a module we created because on one side, there is some overlap between the two platforms, and that overlap in some cases gives room for discussion, for confusion, etc., etc. So we decided let's make a structural module on the difference between the two. We've discussed commerce for end user, so you know what commerce can do. We discussed Connect end user, the functionality of Connect so far in the last two sessions. So the last part to discuss is, okay, and how do they work together and how are they different? That's why we do this module at this point. So let's first look at the vision of our, let's say, Connect team. What we're going to do is, or what we want to ensure is the success of Cloud Blue customers. So we can increase the usage of our platforms, plural, and prepare new customers for success. So a customer in this case is either a vendor or a distributor or an organization that functions as both. And to be honest, most distributors are working as both, because I don't know any individual distributor that does not have somehow some product of their own. So that means that if you are onboarding a product of your own, you're already a vendor. Whether you build it in Connect or not is a different discussion, but you're a vendor because you have a product, you have some intellectual property, or at least an idea that of some kind of service, product, device that you sell. That is the key thing. That means that whatever you want to do, we want to make you successful. And our platforms, as it says in here, is of course about both Connect as well as commerce. But like I said, I think in the first session about Connect, we did not create Connect with commerce in mind only. We created Connect to be, let's say, compatible and able to integrate with the majority of the hyperscalers. Majority of the hyperscalers, as I say, Azure Marketplace, AWS Marketplace, Google Cloud Platform Marketplace, or how it's called there. And of course, since it's the same company, we integrate with Cloud Blue Commerce. It would be strange not to do that. But be aware that from the start, our intention was to be generic. That is why, if you look at the last module of the commerce, the last day of the commerce end user training, where we talk about PLM, this is why we set up Connect as a flat product database. Because with an integration, we can make flat hierarchical. by having a let's say matrix in the middle, a product matrix in the middle that hooks up the hierarchical stuff with the flat structure in Connect. It's easier to do that than, because we know both products, than to build a hierarchical product that we have to somehow, through an extension, flatten out towards some possible hyperscaler. So that is why we have that difference in product, let's say, architecture. We've done that from the beginning. And that is, I think, I would almost say, the key to the success we have. The key to the success is we did not think about it only from our own perspective. The thought behind doing it this way is that if you as a vendor build your product into Connect, you have one single source of product for provisioning, for fulfillment, et cetera, et cetera. And then you can hook up to any distributor without, let's say, rebuilding or customizing the integration, because it's all Connect. And from Connect distributor side, where do you go? I don't care. We have an extension to receive orders from Azure Marketplace. We have an extension to receive orders from AWS Marketplace. We have an extension to receive orders from Cloud WooCommerce. So that is our key, let's say, our key thought behind the Connect platform. The Commerce platform is older. The Commerce platform, I just noticed last week, something like that, that I've been doing trainings for Commerce and all its predecessors for about 13 years already. That's where I started with, and I started with version 5 point whatever. So there were older versions prior to me joining this company. So I'm not 100% sure what the full thought behind it, the Commerce platform, except for, of course, we want to provision, and initially it was for small hosters. And initially it was only the operation side. I don't know what the thoughts behind that were, but I know for a fact that we decided on the structure of Connect because of our attempt to be independent from a Commerce platform. Because we also realize that the bigger hyperscalers, let's be fair, right? The bigger hyperscalers at this moment are Azure Marketplace, AWS Marketplace, and Google Cloud Platform. We, with our Cloud WooCommerce, are just a small player. So if we want to be successful with our fulfillment platform, we had to be able to integrate with these three big ones to make it interesting for our vendors to onboard on that platform. And the only way for Commerce to stay successful is that we have a big portfolio when it comes to products that are sold, that we can integrate with our Commerce platform. So that was the thought behind it. And it seems we were successful. We saw on Wednesday in the catalog that we have about 600 products in our portfolio on Connect. That means that the majority of distributors can find the products they want, not even a product they would like, but the products they want. Because we have been able to reach and convince most of the vendors to onboard on Connect. Okay, so let's start looking at the agenda of this session. As I said, it's a shorter session when it comes to the slide deck. I will go into a couple of demonstrations a little bit later. I think I will make this 2 recordings again, one for the slide deck and one for the demonstrations. And after those demonstrations, I will shut down the recording again, and I'll start a new one for Q&A. So any questions you have, already write them down, because you will have quite a long time for Q&A, or we have a very short session, which, like I said, is always good right before the weekend. So we're going to talk about two things. First one is the actual title of this module, of this chapter. It's CloudBlue Connect versus CloudBlue Commerce. What are the differences between the two? And the second one is just a couple of resources, meaning where do you find our documentation? What more can you find? What information do we have on external sites, etc., etc.? Those things are available. So let's look at CloudBlue Connect versus CloudBlue Commerce. So let's imagine a digital marketplace. If you look at a generic digital marketplace, and I'm not talking about CloudBlue Commerce in your data center, I'm talking about digital marketplaces in general. What products can you buy as a consumer? Well, there are a couple. We could buy, and there are several examples of that, computers, tablets, IT accessories, like laptops, desktop monitors, tablets, mouses, keyboards, stuff like that. We could purchase printers and accessories. We've got a very successful online store in the Netherlands, 123ink.nl, where you can buy both the, let's say, native ink pods for your printer, but also they have, for every brand, they have their own native, let's say, proprietary alternative, which is half the price. So you try it once. If you don't like it, toss it out and buy the real ones. But so far, these guys have been doing what they pretend to do, namely, they give you the same experience for half price. Cell phones, let's be honest, right? Cell phones and accessories is one of the biggest things to be sold online. Cell phone covers, cell phone, etc. Cases. Let's look a little bit further. Acronis products. Why do we mention Acronis? Because it is one of the three that we will mention here. Acronis is used to be a very close partner. When we were still in Russia, the Moscow office of CloudBlue was on the same floor as the Acronis office. We can do Adobe Cloud. We are heavily investing in the Adobe Cloud product portfolio. Why? Because initially, Adobe did not want to think about this, but we now see that there is a huge traction towards Adobe Cloud in the graphical world specifically. So Adobe had to find a way to get through to that market. Initially, they thought, just like some others, that they would be able to conquer the world on their own. Hey, we're that well known. It's enough to have on our own website the possibility to subscribe to our products, right? They have gone from a buy the product to a subscribe to the product model only fairly recently when you look at the rest of the market. Guess what? They were wrong. They were not able, or they might have been able if they would have stood their ground. But a lot of people have a preferred supplier. They have a preferred supplier where they buy all their software. Or I would almost say where they rent all their software, because that's basically what we do, right? We rent it or we subscribe to it. So they had to make the turn and say, okay, let's go for that, for a additional channel to start selling those, selling our subscriptions. Then we've got Microsoft. Microsoft has been in this world a little bit longer already. For those that are as old as I am, maybe a little bit younger, but not that much, maybe remember that Microsoft used to have a product called not business productivity online, hosted exchange and hosted collaboration. Hosted messaging collaboration used to be something where you would install, as a hoster, you would install Exchange in your data center. In those days, you would install Lync in your data center, and people would take a subscription to that. It was basically, I would almost say, the staging environment for Office 365. A lot of providers invested time, invested money, invested knowledge in getting that up and running. We were one of the control panels with Parallels. We were one of the control panels that would be able to integrate with hosted messaging and collaboration. NSIM was an alternative control panel that was able to integrate with that setup. They had, Microsoft in that case, they had us test what needs to be done. A new version came out. Of Exchange. We had to wait for the layer on top of it, because there was always an extra layer on top of it, because Exchange was not built for multi-tenancy. So we had to wait for that to be built in or to be faked on top of the scenario. We tested it, and eventually Microsoft released BPOS. Not sure if you remember that one, Business Productivity Online Suite, which was hosted messaging and collaboration, only not in a data center of the hosters, but in a data center from Microsoft. So actually what Microsoft did is we had them test drive the product, and after they fixed every single bug in it, they said, thank you for testing it. Now we're going to run the operation ourselves. And that has evolved in Microsoft Office 365. You can imagine some of the providers, how they thought about that. And then, of course, whatever you further want to sell. And from my perspective, if you look at what is available online for sale, for subscription, and that those are two things that I think can be combined in the same marketplace. We can sell any good, any physical good to any cloud service. Whatever you want to sell, we can sell using our two platforms. Very, very important. Of course, most of us, most people that I speak to, and you are one group of that, but most groups that I speak of are in it for the services, on the service business. So software as a service, managed services, those kind of scenarios. However, if you want to, you can sell boxes, you can sell phones, you can have people subscribe, rent a phone, but you could also just sell physical devices if you want to. Ship a box and be done with it. That is a key thing. So where are our platforms now? So we have a product flow. We have a couple of roles, and we discussed them already. The first one is the vendor. That is where everything originates. It's the developer of a service. It is the manufacturer of a device. It is the intellectual property owner of what needs to be sold or rented out. Then we have a distributor. Of course, we have a distributor, because the vendor, of course, can do direct sales, but to get a global reach without the amount of costs that comes with a global reach with offices everywhere, you need different channels, different distributor channels. And of course, in the end, there will be customers. Customer is the end customer, the consumer, the person or company that buys that product to use it. So let's first review the relationship between the vendor and the distributor. So we're talking about that line, which means that we're going to discuss this. So what is the base of these relationships? Well, there are four things here. We need to have a contract between the vendor and the distributor. Hey, you're going to sell my products? Good. That means that I want you to sign this to authorize you to sell those products. In that contract, there are some pricing, some agreements, etc., etc. The thing is that in CloudBlue Connect, we've looked at this. This is the contract flow. CloudBlue Connect supports many-to-many relationships between different types of accounts: vendor, distributor, vendor, distributor, vendor, distributor, 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 vendor, distributor, reseller. It depends on how you want to do this. And in most cases, it is not a one-on-one relationship. A vendor, most of the time, has different relationships with different distributors because they don't want a single channel. They want a channel in Latin America. They want a channel in Europe. They want a channel in Africa. That might be the same company. That might be different companies. On the other side, those distributors are not putting their money on a single horse. So they're not going to sell products from one vendor only. They want to sell quite a set of products. So these distributors might have different vendor relationships. I hope I still sound sane and things that I'm saying are logical. But for me, it is a key thing that you realize that this is the case. Of course, the next thing we need to do is product onboarding. Of course, what you will see here, and now you have to think back to the slides you saw in the last two sessions. These are the four flows that you're going to see, right? That I hope you realize that now. Businesses need products to sell, so we have to onboard. Contracts are signed. The vendor presents their product to the digital market, the distributor's marketplace, to the digital marketplace. The next step is, of course, we have a flow back. It is order submitted. And of course, eventually, the vendor needs to approve them, needs to set them up, etc., etc. And the last one is usage reporting. I hope you are not surprised that those are the four key functionalities of CloudBlue Connect. This is what we just covered in the previous 2 days, 2 sessions. So in this case, who's doing this? CloudBlue Connect is taking care of the relationship between the vendor and the distributor. So anything product related, and this is a key thing because we did not speak about how does the distributor pay the vendor. Anything on money basis, in this case, is outside of this flow. So the money flows outside of Connect. The vendor just sends an invoice to the distributor. The distributor pays that invoice outside of Connect. It's that simple. So let's look at a couple of types of systems. What is an e-commerce system? An e-commerce platform is an end-to-end software solution that allows online retailers to manage their businesses. So what are we talking about? We're talking about Shopify, WooCommerce, Wix e-commerce, BigCommerce, Magento. The e-commerce platforms upload the products described in CloudBlue Connect and sell them to their customers. And this is the funny part, because next to the fact that we would consider CloudBlue Commerce an e-commerce system, you can sell e-commerce systems through Connect and Commerce as well. So for smaller businesses, you can have a, let's say, standard web marketplace for them available using Connect and Commerce. We also have things like ERP, CRM, BSS, Business Support System. In this case, BSS serves distributor commerce relationship, customer relationships. So what are we talking about? We're talking about Cloud WooCommerce. And we have OSSs, Operation Support System. And this is where I would almost say there is an overlap. Because what is key? CloudBlue Connect is not any of those. CloudBlue Connect is not an e-commerce system. It's not an ERP. It's not a CRM system. It's not a BSS. I'm not entirely sure if it's not an OSS because it has some of the features an OSS will have, but it's not a full OSS. So CloudBlue Connect is not those things. What are we talking about then? Well, anywhere between the distributor and the consumer is where those things are, or at least the BSS up to here. Where is my mouse? There it is. Up to here, this part could be considered Cloud WooCommerce. So what are we doing? Between the distributor, we have infrastructure. The distributor is fully responsible for the infrastructure of where scenarios are working, where the customer buys his product. The distributor sets up the offers catalog. The distributor or the reseller in this case, right? But it's the distributor that includes the products to the environment, and then the reseller decides which of those products that he gets delegated he's going to actually sell. The platform between the distributor and the consumer is for subscription management. And there is, again, an overlap here. Because from a business perspective, subscription management means we have to charge for the subscription. We have to make sure a subscription that is not paid for is ended. We are responsible for the full life cycle of that subscription. That is where commerce, the BSS, is doing its job. On the other side, of course, we also think about, I would almost say, the physical subscription. Of course, that's hard to talk about a physical subscription when you're talking about Office 365, but let's consider Office 365 a physical subscription. So there is also management of that one. And who does that? That is where Connect comes in. So you see that it's not black and white. There is a lot of overlap between the two. If you look at the official terminology. However, provisioning is an operations thing, or is also happening on this side of the distributor where we have the vendor here, right? We've got the vendor there. Subscription management, of course, starts here, but also happens there. Reporting and BI, depending on what reporting we're talking about. But in this case, I think that reporting is financial reporting, so it belongs only between distributor and consumer. Identity management is between distributor and consumer. Multi-reseller, multi-channel. I would almost say that is not a direct line, but a dotted line that also goes to this side of the fence. And now I'm running into my keyboard. There we go. A dotted line. Because Connect has those capabilities as well. But in general, we would say that this is where commerce lives. These are the 8 pillars of commerce. Subscription management, when it comes to financial subscriptions, offer catalogs, infrastructure, billing and invoicing, provisioning, reporting and BI, identity management, and multi-channel, multi-reseller. That is where we would find the commerce functionality. That is Cloud WooCommerce. So Cloud WooCommerce is an automation solution that empowers distributors to launch marketplaces and effectively provision, manage, and sell services through a single cloud platform. This is hopefully not new for you because you've been using that platform for a longer time. So why do I bother? We have our own marketplace. We see that more than 200 leading cloud-based applications. If you have a product, and that is why I still left this slide in, because of this little piece. If you have products where you would want to sell them, but you cannot get that direct relationship with that vendor, consider syndicating with Ingram Micro Cloud Marketplace. We might be able to leverage the product. On the other hand, if they don't want to go into business with you as big as you are in Latin America, I would almost say they're stupid. They miss something. So what are the benefits? Well, scaling, multi-country, multi-tier, multi-channel models, saving time for automatic billing, especially, and some of your countries do that, others don't. You can have the system actually charge credit cards, actually charge PayPal accounts, etc., etc. Although that might be more something for business to consumer than for business to business, but it is still possible. This one, I'm not too happy about this marketing slide, because when we're talking about product lifecycle manager, we are working on a way to bundle two products from different vendors into a, let's say, single buyable object. So what would I talk about? That I would set up a product where I buy my Office 365 mailboxes together with immediately an Acronis subscription. And in such a way that if I buy an extra mailbox, that I automatically add a license for Acronis to back up that mailbox as well. This one, we are working on it. We have made big progress, but we still have a hard time, I would almost say, creating composite. I had to think about the terminology in English. A composite resource. A composite resource being a thing that you buy. Let's call it a small little box that I buy with multiple things in it. So if I buy the composite resource, I would, under the hood, buy a license for E5 and the license for Acronis. We're working on that because that appeared to be more complex than we imagined initially, but we're getting there. We're almost there. And of course, what we absolutely try to get to function is a dedicated marketplace. A dedicated marketplace for customers, dedicated reseller partners, and of course, for our internal sales team, we also want to have that dedicated marketplace with different product views if needed, different functionalities if needed, even a marketplace where I can register as a new customer as well. And maybe that is the power that our platform has. We don't force you to use everything like this, but it's available. And we see that even on the same platform, physical platform, we see one reseller use that sign up page and other resellers saying, no, we want to first do a credit check. It is available if you want to, but it's not mandatory to implement everything. And that makes, for me at least, Cloud WooCommerce, with its marketplace benefits, with its flexibility, one of the, I would almost say, greatest products that I've taught. Prior to joining this company, I've done a lot of Microsoft training and other trainings. So this product is as flexible as it gets. Most of the things that people ask us, if we can do this, there is a possible answer. Sometimes it requires some middleware that handles things using API methods, but in most cases, we can just configure things. So where are we? We have a native product, and that native product, of course, in this case, looking at the logo, it is some Dropbox kind of thing. That product is set up in Connect. We discussed that the last 2 days, last 2 sessions. At that point, the product is integrated, listed into Commerce, and then Commerce sells it to the consumer. This is the flow that we have. This is always the flow. That also means that when we're talking about orders, we place the order to Commerce. Commerce converts that order in a provisioning request, in a PR. And of course, eventually, that on the vendor side, and there are a couple of things here, and that is maybe key to understand. Cloud WooCommerce in this case is, of course, a single platform, but there are 2 operators that are working, because this is all distributor and maybe reseller. Let's do a reseller here as well. That is also handled inside Commerce, and maybe I should draw a line in here. But Commerce hands over the product to Connect, but not just to Connect. It hands it over with their credentials to Connect. That means that this provisioning request is created initially at the distributor side. The distributor side now goes in and verifies everything. It starts with, okay, what vendor is it? What product is it? And hands it over to that appropriate vendor. Then Connect on the vendor side verifies if all the mandatory parameters, ordering parameters in this case, are set by the customer in the order. If not, we send from the distributor side a notification to the customer, either through that inquiring template. Remember that one from Wednesday, that inquiring template in the control panel, or we can also do it by email or a combination of them. Was that a question?
6 anos, isso. Quando o Felipe era pequenininho, ele estava engatinhando, ele foi mexer com ela.
So we send it, the customer goes in and has to answer those questions. Basically, what happens is it goes back here. Mandatory parameters, you will see it with the branding of the distributor. That means that, let me pull it in. This is the vendor's account. AMX demo, Eric Dennekamp, etc., etc. But this is not the brand that the vendor set. It is the brand that the distributor has created. I will show you that. That's one of the things I will show you after this training. So the customer will think that this request comes from the distributor. Actually, it comes from the vendor, but it appears to come from the distributor. So that is why that branding part is important. And eventually, it is sent to the APIs of the product. Tenant is created, licenses are generated or whatever, and the whole flow goes back to the consumer. That is how this works. So we have an example. So what are we doing? We're making Dropbox available in marketplaces, and I want you to think for yourself, what is not correct in this order? I've got 2, 4, 6, 8 steps in a flow. And let's think about what needs to change in this. So I give you the steps. These are the 8. What should we change? So let's do this first. First, you set up the relationship, then you define a product, and then you list it. You cannot list a product that is not there, right? That is a key thing. So there we go. Setting up relationship is the first step. How does that work? This is that contract flow. This is done in Connect. And probably you now understand why those colors are different. This is Connect. Then we define a product. Again, it's Connect. And I'm going to add a couple of things later as well. Then we create a product listing. Again, this is in Connect. Oh. What is now the next one? Well, the thing is that we still have to swap something, because the moment we reach commerce, where we create a commercial offer, we have to have that listing, of course. Then we subscribe to this, which is the order flow. Then this is the order itself in commerce that turns into a request for a product. That is that provisioning request. So this is Connect again. We process that request by talking to the API. Oh, I thought I did this. Connect. And this is commerce again. This is recurring billing, right? Subscribe to the service, is preceded with paying for the initial scenario. The colors, commerce, Connect, etc. But now let's look at which entity is responsible. Setting up relationship. It starts with the distributor and it goes to the vendor, right? That's a key thing. The product definition is only done by the vendor. Then we create a product listing. Done by the vendor, send to the distributor. This is distributor. Anything commerce is always distributor. So I can now at least fill in these. Request for a product. Well, this is again the distributor pushing it to the vendor. And this is the vendor that processes the request. Of course, after that, we have the whole flow back to even the customer. But those are a couple of things, concepts that you need to know. Why? Maybe not to build anything, because that might not be your task, but it's good to know where each step resides, who needs to do it, and that means also who needs to troubleshoot it. Let's say you are support and you see something going wrong with an order. An order on operation, an order in billing that says provisioning failed. Okay, provisioning failed. I see it in commerce. But where did it actually go wrong? It went wrong at vendor side. So you have to verify what information do I get to help the vendor so I can escalate it to the vendor and ask them to fix it. Key thing. So we have our scenarios. We've got Cloud Blue. That sets up a relationship between vendor and distributor. We describe the product to make it standardized for sale via the provider's commerce system. Provider, in this case, distributor, right? They Connect approves orders. I would say approves the provisioning requests or purchase requests, but let's say they're part of that relationship. And here we are again. I hope it doesn't surprise you. We've got an order flow. Sorry, we've got a contract flow. We've got the product flow. We've got an order flow, and we've got the usage flow. Again, those 4 flows. This is why that slide that I emphasized on every time is so important, because it comes back with every interaction with Connect. So what does commerce do? Well, it sets up infrastructure if needed. It manages resellers and customers' accounts. It onboards vendors' products. And it creates and marks an offer available to sell. And of course, gets the orders and bill the customers. So those are the things that we have in commerce. Those are the things that we have in Connect. And of course, this is not something that always starts in Connect and then ends in commerce. You see that here there are 2 commerce scenarios in the middle. Then we go back to Connect, and then we end up in commerce again. It's always a cooperation of these 2 platforms. Having said that, we have a couple of information resources. And I want to demonstrate those quickly. We've got our links set up. Let me see if I can get an arrow here. Let's do that. There we are. Let's see if it can find it. Probably not. Those links are older. Here we see we go to platform. The thing is that we have, I would almost say, for Cloud Blue Connect. Sorry. Let's go back to the slides. We used to emphasize those platforms as individual things. We are more and more trying to also position them as a single platform from our perspective. Of course, we want to onboard vendors on Connect for the other hyperscalers, but that means that the links you will see in the slide decks will not always be correct anymore. So in this case, you end up in cloudblue.com platform. And platform is all about the combination of the 2, where we have the monetization. Our new motto is we are the monetization platform. What happens where? What are the value-added services that we can integrate with? Custom catalog creation, platform features. You see it is presented as a single platform. But what I want to talk about is for Connect, there is a good, where are we? Here we are. We've got our Connect community. Let me quickly share this link in the chat for those interested, because this is where you find all our documentation. We have a getting started there. We have a manual for each individual module in the platform. So everything I see here, account settings, catalog, commerce, are those tiles you will see on the homepage on the dashboard. So there is a manual for each and every one of them. We also have the developer resources. we've got the description of our SDK for JavaScript, for PHP, for Python. We also have a Python Open API client if you want to. And we've got our pure and simple Open API specification. When we're looking at the training that starts on, if I'm correct for you, on Tuesday, the Connect for Developers, this is what we're going to work with, part of that. Everything is fully described. We've got REST clients. Take whichever you prefer. In the training, we're going to use Insomnia because it is less, I would almost say, it has a better learning curve to use Insomnia with all the environments that are there, sample calls, etc. What is also, and there is of course the help and support scenarios. Another thing that might be of interest for you is we have our own YouTube channel for CloudBlue Connect. A lot of videos about specific modules, extensions, what's news, etc. Here we see a version 26. Vendor price updates, vendor creation, tutorial, product information management. Most of these of the modules have their own video after they have been introduced. The downside of this, sadly, is that most of those videos are created the moment the module has been created. And they're not always updated to the latest version if we add something to the module. We do update the documentation though. So if you have the generic knowledge of the module, you can always use the what's new to figure out what those additions are and what they do. I would say this is a very, very important resource to figure out new things. For commerce, we actually have our documentation, and that documentation is version-based. So what I'm giving you now is the 21 documentation. Here we see it, right? So Control A, C. Let me also give you the 20.5 documentation. Documentation. There we go. Let's go to the version 21 documentation now. There are the standard user guides, what is new for this month in 2024, etc., version 21. And for each of the components, there is a separate page of documentation. Product lifecycle management, for instance, here, there is a deployment, there is a file requirements section, provisioning of internally fulfilled products. So let's say the replacement of Dummygate, how to monitor it using specific tools. All that is set up on a component by component scenario. Of course, there is generic information as well. When we look at integration, we have our platform SDK. For those that, and let me open a new tab with the prior version 20.5. If I go to integration, we have the platform SDK, We've got APS applications. If I go to the new one, let me go back to integration, service integration, APS application hosting, guys, is still there. We're trying to get away from this, by the way. And in 20 point, let me see, 20.4, it's the same URL. API, we have an open API and we've got platform API. This API, the XML over RPC, is going to disappear. So if you're still thinking in these terms, internally, it might still work, but don't go there. But these are the documentation pages that we can have. This is your APIs for commerce. These are the, where is it? This is the documentation page for Connect. We've got some internal resources. I'm going to skip these. This is the first part. What questions do you have on this module? If you don't, again, please give me that thumbs up. If you do, ask or type them in the chat. Okay. So let me stop this recording.